Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by Taulia. Today, we will be looking at how to take P2P from tactical to value-adding. My name is Sarah Fury, and I am the Head of Research at Shared Services Link, and I will be your host for today. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Matthew Wright, who is the VP of Customer Success at Taulia. You, of course, have a very important role to play in today's webinar, and that is to make sure that you get the most out of your hour. Please do submit your questions to us on the right-hand side of your screen using the chat functionality. The sooner you ask your questions, the more likely we will be able to answer them in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. So touching briefly on the agenda for today, I will be briefly introducing the context and the intention of the session. I will also then be giving some background on the survey that we conducted with Taulia and insight into the 3 areas that we found where P2P can focus on to drive real value to the business. I will then be handing over you to Matt, who will be discussing the 4 projects that you can start on today to take you on the journey from tactical to value-adding. Matt also then has some great stats to share on what value-adding P2P organizations look like, and he'll be able to share some valuable benchmarking information with you. Again, we will have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions at the end of the webinar. So to start off, I wanted to touch on the context for today. What is it that makes a P2P department truly value-adding? Now, taking a step back from everything that P2P does every day, there are 2 things that we feel really matter. One is delivering a high quality and ideally world-class service, and 2 is being able to improve the bottom line of the business. By that we mean saving more money, driving revenue, and potentially even driving profits. If you can do both these things, you can dramatically improve the reputation of your department, and it can help you be seen as truly value-adding. Now, Shared Services Link ran a survey a few months ago with Taulia, and we looked at what P2P can do to take them from being tactical to value-adding. Now, before we dive into these survey results, I would first like to kick off with our first poll question of the day to learn a little bit more about you. So coming up on your screen now is the first poll question of the day, and we want to know, how would you describe your P2P department today? Would you say that you're mainly focused on transactional activity and just improving efficiency? Would you say that you're at a stage where you've made some efficiency savings, but you're really looking at value-adding opportunities? Or would you say that you are really conceived as a business partner, that you're already delivering high quality and value-adding service? If you've not been on a Shared Services Link webinar before, we do share these results live. So we do like to get about 60 to 70% of you voting at least. So please take the one that is closest to you, and we'll be sharing the results live shortly. We've just got over 50% of you voting, so if you could choose the one that best matches your position. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. That's great, just over 60% of you voting. Coming up on your screen now are the results as well. And we can see that 50% of you are now looking, you've made some of these savings, and you're really looking at ways to drive value to the business. So we do hope this webinar will help shed light on some ways that you can do that. Now that we know a little bit more about you, I'd also like to share a little bit more about the respondents of our survey, just to give you some background on all the stats we'll be sharing. We conducted research with over 90 shared services professionals, and if you look at the chart on the left, you will see the job functions of the respondents. Most of the respondents were in purchasing, AP, procure-to-pay, and finance, and it was just a small percentage, 2%, that were in AR, and just 1% in treasury. And on the right hand, you'll see that the majority of our respondents are in North America or Europe. That's 44% in North America, followed by 40% in Europe, and the rest were in Australia, the Middle East, South America, or Asia. Now, expanding into the size of the companies involved, we also looked at their annual revenue and spend. So typical for our audience in general, 72% were from companies with $1 billion or more revenue. That's the 37% with $11 billion plus, and the 12% in $5 billion to $10 billion, and the 23% from $1 billion to $5 billion. And on the right, you'll see that the annual spend is also roughly in line with those figures as well, with 65% who spend more than $1 billion a year. That's a 25, 15, and 25% combined. So hopefully that just gives you a little sense of the size of the companies we are dealing with. But more interestingly, we asked these respondents a number of questions about their P2P processes, and we found 3 key areas where we see that P2P can focus on to drive significant value to the business. The first is process ownership. Now, hopefully everyone on this webinar is aware that keeping costs to a minimum is an important goal in P2P, but it can be tactical. We find the real value-adding improvements to P2P happen when the procure-to-pay process is understood and managed as a truly end-to-end process. End-to-end process owners should care not only about efficient processes, but also about the outcome of the service. And by outcome, we mean paying the right suppliers on time and protecting your business, your reputation, and your supply chain. Now, we've learned a fair bit about process ownership and how they can improve the P2P process. But first, again, we want to hear from you. So now, coming up on your screen is the second poll question of the day. So you should now see this question. We are asking if you have process owners in your organization. Would you say yes, that you have effective end-to-end process owners? Are you an organization that has process owners, but perhaps they're new or not yet effective? Are you looking at implementing process owners soon? Or do you not have any current plans for process owners that you know about? So again, please tick the option close to you. Much more of you voting quickly this time. We are just at about 60%. So again, please read through these options and choose the one closest to you. And I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. That's great. Just shy of 70% of you voting. And the results should be coming up on your screen here. So it looks like actually most of you do have process owners in some shape or form. That's 29% of you have them effective end-to-end process owners, but 45% have them new and not yet effective. And it's just a minority that don't have them yet. So hopefully, again, we'll be able to shed some light on what is it that makes process owners really effective. So what did we learn about process owners? On the chart on the left, you'll see that, like you, a large percentage of respondents have process owners. Very similar stats, actually, that 71% have them. However, only 37% said they have true end-to-end process owners who have a real authority over the process. The remaining 34% are either new or not yet effective. Further 9% are bringing in process owners soon. So that leaves with us only 15% with no plans for process owners. But what impact do process owners have? Again, let's take a step back to what value P2P can bring to the business. And one of the key indicators of the health of your P2P department is whether you pay your suppliers well. So we asked our survey respondents how they would rate the relationship you have with your suppliers, specifically when it comes to payment. And overall, this actually looks very positive. 17% said excellent, 57% said good, but with the odd complaint. 23% said fair and recognized there are some problems with suppliers, and fortunately, only 3% said poor. Now what we did is we drilled down into that 37% who have effective process owners, and we compared that with people who do not have process owners yet. And what you see here is how they differ. Now, while it's not dramatic, it is significant. 69% without process owners have good or excellent supplier relations with few complaints, but 83% with P2P process owners have good or excellent relationships with very few complaints. Only 17% of those with effective process owners suffer from high levels of complaints from their suppliers. So the key takeaway here is that those with effective process owners have better relationships with their supplier base. And this is an important lesson to walk away with. Now on to the second key finding of our research, and that is around e-invoicing and supplier self-service. Now in business and in our daily lives, the way we communicate and the way we do business has changed rather dramatically in the last 10 years. As we increasingly are being accustomed to be able to order and communicate online, suppliers don't want to pick up the phone and check the status of an invoice any more than you want them calling. Suppliers want to be able to check the status of their invoices and payment online. Any paper invoices and the manual intervention that accompanies it is time-consuming and keeps AP staff focused on low-value activity. Both e-invoicing and supplier self-service are crucial for automating and keeping P2P focused on value-adding activities and delivering a better service. Now we've got lots of detail on this section, but again, we want to ask you some questions around supplier portals and e-invoicing. So first, the question on coming up on your screen is on supplier portals. Coming up on your screen now is a third poll question of the day, and we want to know, do you use supplier portals to facilitate electronic invoicing and invoice status? Would you say yes, that you use supplier portals and then you're generally happy with your program? Would you say yes, you use them, but you're looking to expand on it or improve it? Would you say no, you're not really, no, but you are looking at implementing one soon? Or that no, that you have no plans for supplier portal, supplier self-service? Again, lots of you voting quickly now. We are just over 60%. So I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. And results coming up on your screen. So the winner here is that actually 39% of you don't, but you are looking at implementing one in the near future. And 28% of you said you're looking to expand. 10% of you are generally happy with what you have, and 23% of you, it's not really on your radar at the moment. So interesting results there, and we will compare that to what we asked our survey respondents. So we asked our survey respondents the same question, and only 38% of our respondents had a supplier portal. A little bit similar to what you guys said, but 30% are pursuing supplier portal solutions, and just under a third don't have and aren't currently looking. So in addition to cutting down on the number of supplier queries, supplier portals can also help you cut the time to process an invoice. We asked all of our respondents, everyone who took the survey, how long it takes them to process an invoice from receipt through to approval for payment. And on the chart here on the right, you'll see that we compare those who have a supplier portal solution to those without a supplier portal solution. And here you'll see that 61% of those with supplier portals are able to process an invoice for approval for payment in less than 5 days. And you can compare that to 46% who are able to do that without supplier portals. So again, a significant difference. Now, supplier portal is one tool that can help you cut down this time, but the other really crucial tool to process invoices faster is e-invoicing. And we have some more data on e-invoicing, but again, we would like to hear from you again. So coming up on your screen shortly is the fourth poll question of the day, and we want to know, do you invoice electronically? By invoicing electronically, we mean using an e-invoicing network, using EDI, but not emailing, PDFs, scanning, those kind of things. So kind of true e-invoicing. So what would you say that you do and you're happy with your program? Yes, but you're looking to expand or improve it. No, but you're looking at implementing it soon. Or no, that you currently have no plans for e-invoicing. Just over 60% of you voting, so please pick the option that best reflects your situation, and I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. That's 64% of you voting, and the results should be coming up on your screen. So here we can see that the most popular answer was that yes, but you are looking to expand or improve your e-invoicing program. And a further 15% have and are totally happy with it. And then again, about half here who are no, but looking to implement it soon, and 25% no, but no plans. So it's about 50-50, which is interesting because that actually correlates very strongly with our survey findings here. So on your screen now, you should see the data from our survey. So it is nearly 50-50 from our survey respondents. It's actually 49% currently using e-invoicing and 51% not yet invoicing electronically, with 10% rolling out in the next 2 years. 28% are using some kind of automation tool, such as scanning and OCR, but not true e-invoicing. And 13% are highly manual, so likely very much in the paper world. So again, we drill down into this data on how long it takes to process an invoice from receipt through to approval for payment. And what we found is that 60% with e-invoicing capability are able to pay in 5 days, compared to 44% without. And while 60% is clearly better than 44%, it's actually not as great a difference as we thought it would be. So why is it that 40% of people with e-invoicing capability can't be ready to pay within 5 days? The key problem here is looking at those with e-invoicing capability. There was actually a really low penetration of e-invoicing. So this is a really important slide. I'm going to just take my time on this. And what you see on the left-hand side is that, again, there's a really low rate of e-invoicing penetration. That 62% have fewer than half, or fewer than 40% of their invoices arriving electronically. That's a 27% said they only 1 to 20% of their invoices arrive electronically, and 35% said it's in the 21 to 40% range. At the higher end, only 22% said that more than 60% of their invoices arrive electronically. That's that 19% plus the 3%. So again, this is looking at people with e-invoicing capability, and that many invoices are not yet processed electronically. And what's really telling about the data here is the chart in the middle bottom, where we asked people if they were satisfied with this percentage, and 76% said no. And that is really significant. And we know that e-invoicing can make a big difference to your efficiency and your supplier relationships, but you need to be aware that many who use e-invoicing are dissatisfied with the rates of electronic invoicing. So the key takeaway here is that when looking at e-invoicing providers, be sure to ask them about typical onboarding rates and make sure it matches your expectations. So now that we've covered P2P process ownership and the difference that automation can make, we are now on to the third finding of our survey in the areas where people can drive real value in P2P. And that's early payment discounts. Now, while this is still a very much an emerging area, early payment discounts are an undeniable opportunity to generate savings and actually generate profit by adding money to the bottom line of a business. Any P2P department that can say they are adding millions or tens of millions to the bottom line of the business is one that the business will value. So again, we would like to hear from you in our fifth and final poll question of the day. And we want to know, do you capture early payment discounts from your suppliers? This poll should be up on your screen now. We want to know that you offer them and that you're capturing them from more than 20% of your suppliers. Yes, you offer them, but you're capturing them from actually fewer than 20% of your suppliers. Would you say yes, but you are not able to capture these discounts due to lengthy approval processes? No, you aren't capturing discounts, but you are actively looking at how to. Would you say no, it's not something you're doing, and that as far as you're aware, it's not something you are actively considering? So again, some lively voting, over 60% of you voting already. So please tick the option that best matches your situation. And we'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. 63% of you voting. And the results should be coming up on your screen. So yep, we can see that 30% said yes, that you're capturing discounts from fewer than 20%. And the next biggest winner was that no, and that it's not something that you're currently considering. So I think this is what I read from this, is that some of you are doing it, but not capturing discounts from a large amount of your supplier base. But actually it's 20, over half of you aren't yet doing it. So now we can compare that to the data from our survey. On the left, you'll see that the same data that we asked from our audience, and what we gather from this, again, is that it's very much an emerging area. The top right quarter are people who are capturing discounts. So 9% are capturing over 20%, which is great. 18% are capturing from fewer than 20% of their suppliers, which is a good start. 3% can technically do it, but their suppliers aren't using them yet. 29% are looking at early payment discounts, and 41% aren't really thinking about it yet. Diving a little bit more into those who have offered their suppliers discounts, we can see on the chart on the right that most actually haven't taken up discounts. We asked how many of your suppliers have taken up early payment discounts. 13% said none of their suppliers have taken up the discounts. 57% said 10% or less. And only 13% said more than 10% have taken up discounts offered. So these numbers seem low. And again, from the chart at the bottom, we asked a similar follow-up question, and we can see that 61% said they are not satisfied with that percentage. But interestingly, 26% said unsure. So I think this suggests that this is an area that is very new, and people aren't necessarily sure what to expect. So this is something that I know Matt will touch on later in the presentation, and he will share some presentations of companies that Talia have seen with their customers and can give you some good figures to benchmark off of. But overall, these numbers do seem low. So we also wanted to look into what are the barriers to early payment discounts. Here on the next slide, you'll see that we asked our audience what challenges you have faced when it comes to capturing early payment discounts. And the top two are a lack of ownership and the inability to pay early. There's some other issues in here about confusion about discounting, communicating with suppliers, finance and procurement not aligned, treasury not on board, but focusing on the top two. For the inability to pay early, the solution to that will likely be technology oriented. But a lack of ownership is an interesting one, because releasing money early to suppliers at a discounted price is actually an issue that touches on several departments. You have treasury involved, finance, and procurement. And we found that ownership of this sits in a variety of departments. 61% said their early payment initiative sits within finance, 26% said it sits within procurement, and 13% says treasury drives it. So again, when looking at your early payment discounts program, if you have one or you're rolling one out, it's worth looking at who is or who should be driving your early payment program. And finally, to wrap up this section, for people who aren't using early payment or discounting at all, we asked why. Why aren't they offering early payment discounts? And the top reason here is that the company doesn't want to pay early in standard payment terms due to working capital restrictions. That's an interesting point, which again I think Matt will touch on, because if you actually do use the right partners, this doesn't actually have to be an issue. And the next top reason is that it just isn't a priority yet. I think because, again, this is an area that is new to P2P world, it's just not high on people's agendas yet. And the following reasons are much smaller minorities, but others say they aren't able to pay quickly enough, there's poor alignment, and only 5% so they are unaware of how to capture discounts. So to sum up early payment discounting, for the majority, it's actually not an inability to pay early that's keeping them from capturing discounts. The obstacles are really around resistance from the business and it just not being prioritized yet. So we've covered a lot of ground, thrown a lot of numbers at you, but just to wrap up the main points that we've addressed so far from the survey findings is that businesses value P2P departments that deliver high quality services and help improve the bottom line. And the three key areas where we think you can really focus on to make a difference here are our process ownership, technology to automate invoicing and supplier communication, and early payment discounts. And these three projects can really do wonders for the effectiveness and the reputation of your department. Now, for some very practical guidance on 4 projects that you can start today to help you on this journey to value add, I will now hand you over to Matt Wright of Talia.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks a lot for taking us through all of that really interesting information. You did a fine job of presenting a lot of detail. I hope everybody on the call today finds that as interesting as I do. So let me just tell a little bit about myself. My name is Matt Wright. I am the Vice President of Customer Success for Talia. I'm responsible for all of the post-sale relationships with Talia's customers. And a little bit about Talia. We are a SaaS-based solution provider, and we offer a full-service P2P portal that's live with almost 100 buyers around the world. The Talia portal that we offer includes a very robust set of features, including invoice status, supplier information management, purchase order review, purchase order confirmations, advanced ship notifications, as well as full-service global e-invoicing, and last but not least, a wide range of cutting-edge supplier financing tools. So my job today is to introduce you to 4 projects to initiate you on your journey to adding significant value to your P2P process. And it was great to see in the poll earlier that 88% of you responded and said that you're here to learn how to add more value to your P2P process. So I will start with our first project, which is owning processes. And this one's really important and maybe not as tangible as some of the others, but in our experience in working with some of the biggest companies in the world, this is really the foundation of a successful program. And the reason that it's so important is because in order to effectively drive a P2P process, there's really a lot of cross-functional alignment that needs to take place. Departments including accounts payable, finance, treasury, IT, procurement, vendor master teams, they're all involved in a complete procure-to-pay process. So having somebody that has the authority and the alignment organizationally to manage a process across all of those functions is really, in our experience, the only way to effectively wring all of the value out of your procure-to-pay process possible. So one of the key objectives of this individual is to define the company goals and get the alignment across all of these functions. So in our experience, we want to kind of, we look at where are our most successful programs and what kind of leadership did we have. And I can tell you that our strongest programs are very strongly correlated to the best led programs. And I'll be coming back to where this process owner can influence the other 3 projects as I go through each of those projects. But the real kind of fundamental objective coming out of the gate is for this person to get this alignment across all of the functions and define a set of goals that align across all of those functions. It's very easy to understand how procurement might have a competing goal with finance, or treasury might have a competing goal with accounts payable. So we want to understand across those organizations what is a goal that satisfies all of the objectives that each of those functions is driving towards. And we saw in the survey and I noticed with the responses from the group here today, 71% of the respondents in the survey said they have an owner, but only 37% of them have the authority to affect real change. And 60% of the folks attending the call today said you're working to get effective process owners. And that's really exciting to hear that over half of you recognize the value of strong process ownership. So I applaud you on that. And for those of you who are embarking upon this challenge, I can't emphasize how important it is to find somebody in your organization who can lead the charge and align all of the other parties involved in a set of mutual goals. So if we switch now to the second project, what you find when you talk about supplier communication, if you do some quick analysis, is there's probably a lot of really low-hanging fruit in terms of a lot of expense being put out to solve really simple cases. So, for example, if we just take a simple case, and I did some quick industry research, and I said, for an organization that receives 10,000 invoices per month, there's some research out there that says of all invoices received in an accounts payable department, between 40%, and I found different ranges, between 40% and 70% of all invoices result in some level of inquiry. And if we assume that each inquiry requires 8 minutes of time to resolve, in between talking on the phone with the supplier, doing the research, emailing the supplier, discussing the weather with the supplier, who often doesn't get to talk to a lot of people, I think 8 minutes is a fairly reasonable number. And if we assume just 40% of the invoices received in that 10,000 result in an inquiry, I did the quick math, and that comes out to 533 hours per month just resolving invoice inquiry. If an FTE is productive for 30 hours per week, that's 4.4 FTEs dedicated to managing invoice inquiry for an organization that receives 10,000 invoices per month. That's pretty expensive and fairly easy to solve with published information. So when we looked at the survey, it was interesting that 27% of the respondents said they have a portal but want to expand, and 30% are looking into portal. So more than half of the people are at least looking to expand the portal or expand into delivering portals. And again, when we take a look at the history of portals, what's interesting and what we're finding as we talk to the companies that we're working with is a lot of these companies had one portal or another portal, and they tend to be these kind of older first-generation portals that were really single-function portals. So portals that were there for the purposes of e-invoicing only, or portals that were there to just manage supplier information. And we're even seeing some portals in the market, new products coming out that are delivering only early payment solutions. So what we find in these cases is there's just a fairly low value proposition for a supplier in one of these single function portals, and we're finding that suppliers are being bombarded by different portal solutions from one company. One company could roll out a portal that says, please submit your invoices here, and another portal that says, please go here to manage your vendor master data, and if you would like to get paid early, here's a third solution that you can go and log into to get paid early. So we're really, Talia as an organization, we're really focused on delivering what we consider the second generation of supplier portals. So delivering a full supplier experience that has all of the value-added functions that suppliers are looking for when they want to discover how they're interacting with their customers today. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, a full service portal that offers everything from all of the PO services to e-invoicing, supplier information management, as well as early payments. And I'm going to come back to that process owner. This is where that process owner in the organization can be going around and talking to the different groups and discovering what solutions exist, what pain is out there, and trying to identify how to best solve those pain points. So lots of opportunity here in how we can better communicate with our suppliers using a second generation robust portal with all of the full features that suppliers are looking for when they want to discover how they're interacting and what their business processes look like with their customers. So if we move on to project number 3 now, where we talk about electronic invoicing. This one had some really interesting results, and I think Sarah did a great job of pointing out one of the most telling results. And this is something that we discover when we talk to our customers and prospects as well. And at the risk of being redundant, I'm going to reiterate it. The key point that we found was that there wasn't a massive difference in the amount of time it took to get an invoice approved and ready to pay between organizations that had e-invoicing and those that didn't. And the reason behind that was that 62% of the respondents said that less than 40% of their invoices are received electronically. And 76% of those respondents said that they're not satisfied with the results of their invoicing program. So how do we tackle this problem, right? This isn't a new problem. E-invoicing has been around for a while. EDI has been around for a while. So what does it take to change this? Well, I'm going to circle back to that process owner, and it really starts with defining the goals of the organization. Is the objective to really drive down the paper coming into the business and really improve the efficiency of invoice processing by getting invoices delivered electronically? If the answer to that is yes, then it really takes some effort to go out and look for a solution that will appeal to the suppliers. What we find when we talk to buying organizations who have less than stellar e-invoicing programs is there's a lot of barriers to adoption that these historic e-invoicing providers have been taking to the market, not the least of which is a fee for those suppliers. So there's been a lot of disruption in the invoicing market in the past few years. We are amongst them. We feel very strongly that in order to achieve any type of meaningful e-invoicing conversion rate, you have to be able to offer this as a no-charge option for your suppliers. And when I say offer this as a free service, I mean all forms of e-invoicing, whether that's portal-based or e-file based, so suppliers sending structured XML or CSV files, or even suppliers who are submitting PDFs that are read electronically by a service and then ultimately delivered in a true electronic format. All of those should be free to your suppliers if you expect to achieve meaningful e-invoicing conversion. Another element that's really important to having successful e-invoicing programs is working with a solution provider that has experience and can guide you through the communication process that's required to be effective. So working with your internal groups to come up with the messaging that you share internally to your organizations, as well as a solution provider that has a very robust supplier marketing service that they can use to reach out and touch and communicate with your suppliers. So just to kind of reiterate one of the stats that we saw from the attendees, 60% of you said you want to improve or implement e-invoicing, and only 15% of you are happy with your with your invoicing programs. And I just want to emphasize one point before I move on to the next project, which we're going to this kind of dovetails right into it, which is if we talk about how discounting programs can be successful, one of the best ways you can make a discounting program successful is by having high levels of e-invoicing. And I think that's fairly obvious. E-invoices arrive more quickly, they have fewer exceptions, and they get approved and ready to pay more quickly, extending the opportunity for early payments for your suppliers. So with that, let's take a look at what project number 4 could mean to your organizations and talk about early payments. So the first step that you can do in evaluating whether you want to embark upon an early payment program is just do some quick math. It doesn't take a huge level of adoption to turn into real discount revenue. So in our experience with our customers, we commonly see about $1 million in early payment revenue achieved for every $1 billion of spend that's offered for early payments. So that's real money, and that can offset a lot of the expense in an accounts payable organization, and oftentimes offset it entirely and turn it into a profit center. And the obvious question is, well, discounting's been around for a while with traditional based discounts, so just why is dynamic discounting really changing things so dramatically? And there's a fistful of reasons, and I'll just talk about them quickly. So in order to negotiate traditional discounts, it's generally hard to scale. It requires some one-on-one negotiation. So the penetration of traditional cliff-based discounts is fairly low. We see it ranging between 8 and 12% of the total spend of all of our customers is on some traditional negotiated discount term. The reason for that is suppliers kind of don't like them for a couple of reasons. They're not very predictable. 2% 10 net 30 can be very hit or miss to suppliers, because if the invoice isn't approved in 10 days, then they're not getting paid until 30 days. So they either get paid on day 10 or day 30. So it's really hit or miss for them. Even worse than that, a lot of these discount terms get abused. So suppliers sign up for 2% 10 net 30, but the buying organizations take 2% regardless of when the invoice is approved. So they take that 2% discount on the 15th day or the 20th day. So suppliers kind of are reticent to that. And then in some cases, buying organizations just don't see the value because they can't get those invoices approved fast enough. So they're missing discounts and reasonable approval cycles. 11 days, 12 days isn't completely out of this world, but if you're on 210 net 30, you're missing those discounts. So using a dynamic discounting program with early payments really improves all of those. It's easy to offer dynamic discounting to the entire supply base through a supplier portal. Suppliers have the opportunity to just opt in and get paid as soon as invoices are approved on all of those invoices, so they don't have to come back and request early payments every time an invoice gets approved. It's predictable. They can select the date that they want to get paid. And it's sliding scale discounts, right? So every day that passes, the discount amount goes lower. So they simply cannot be abused. And that allows buying organizations to even capture discounts beyond those, somewhat reasonable approval cycles. So if you're in that 10 to 12 day approval cycle or 15-day approval cycle, you still have opportunities to receive discounts or early payments after the 15th day. So I think there's a lot of, inherent improvement in the technology around discounting that's really shifting away from cliff-based discount terms. But what we saw in the survey results is it's not all about just can we deploy the technology. 38% of the respondents said that discounting isn't a priority, and we find this to be fairly consistent with what we're finding in the market too, which is a lot of your organizations are competing with some sort of DPO initiative or working capital constraints. And that's more common than we would expect. Even big organizations with big cash balances will be fighting with DPO or working capital constraints. So we came to the market a little more than a year ago with a solution that we call Talia Enhanced Discounting that allows buying organizations to offer suppliers early payment through third-party financing, different than traditional bank-funded supply chain finance programs in the sense that there's very low barriers for adoption. The due diligence required is simply a click-through on a website, so it's extremely scalable, much more scalable than supply chain finance programs. And we actually strongly suggest that we don't have to replace a supply chain finance program. We can sit right next to a supply chain finance program and go out into the long tail of the supply base with this third-party financing. And there's some neat advantages to this. Oftentimes, we can offer funding at rates lower than the buying organization's hurdle rates are. So we can go out into the mid and the long tail with rates that are much lower and more attractive to suppliers than a buying organization would be willing to deploy their own cash at. One of the other neat advantages of TED is that we actually allow the buying organizations to share some of that discount revenue that's captured. So it's not simply a working capital advantage. We give you some of those discounts back. And you could also use this tool much like supplier financing or traditional supply chain financing. You could actually improve your DPO or generate some working capital by extending your payment terms and in return offering your suppliers affordable financing to get paid sooner than they were being paid originally. So third-party financing is a really important part of the new landscape of discounting. And let's not, just to underscore before we wrap up on this one, is the demand for early payments is high. And we don't need to look further than the explosive factoring market. The growth in factoring has just been overwhelming even in the past 10 years. So, some of you may be aware that your suppliers are already getting paid early on your invoices, but they're not asking you for early payments. They're taking those receivables and they're going out to third parties and using those receivables as assets to borrow against. So I would be willing to bet a significant number of your suppliers are out there today getting paid early on your invoices, but not letting you participate in any of the upside potential of those early payments. So just to kind of summarize these 4 projects and the steps that it takes to really adding value to your P2P process, it all starts with that process owner. Really finding that process owner that can get aligned across the organization and look at how you can better communicate with your suppliers through portals. What are your e-invoicing goals, and how can you leverage some of the new technology and discounting to ultimately turn your P2P process into a profit center for your organization? So we can take a look now at some of the results that Talia has seen with some of our customers. So what we're showing here is a few companies that have deployed Talia in the past couple of years and their portal adoption rates. So this is the number of suppliers who are regularly using the portal. And the reason that we get rates like this, such high adoption rates, is something I'll go back to at the beginning. First of all, we work really hard to find a champion. We find that process owner within our organization to get everybody aligned, so that we can offer all of the services available on our portal. So the more value that we create in the portal to your suppliers, the more reasons we give them to come to the portal. And we're really trying to reduce and eliminate as many barriers of adoption to use the portals. And really, we spend a lot of energy focusing on the supplier experience. We have a little mantra here at Talia where we have 2 kinds of customers. We have buyer customers and supplier customers, and we really live up to that. We treat our suppliers as customers, and we invest in the interfaces and tools that our suppliers use, because ultimately, if our suppliers are happy and our suppliers are realizing value from our portal, then our buying customers are receiving value from those interactions that the suppliers are enjoying as well. If we take a look at what e-invoicing adoption could look like when you offer a solution like Talia that's free and has all of the e-invoicing channels available to the suppliers. So suppliers can upload XML or CSV through an automated channel. They can go to the portal and convert their purchase orders into invoices directly, or they can even send PDFs that we will read and deliver electronically. It's not out of this world to believe that you can get into the high 80s and 90s, low 90% conversion of your invoice receipts coming electronically. And then where we really kind of talk about how to drive dollars into the organization, when we look at discount capture using a solution like Talia, we have one organization who's been using our solution for a few years. They went live with Talia in 2010, implemented in 2010, went live in early 2011. And they've been achieving over $30 million in discounts since that point annually, and actually in the past 3 years have been exceeding $40 million in discounts annually, to the point where they've actually generated $160 million in discount capture in the past 4 years. So I think we'd all agree that that's a fairly successful program and something that I'm certain offsets all of the expense associated with accounts payable. So I will turn this back over to Sarah now and open it up for questions. Thank you all very much for giving us the opportunity to present these results today.
Great, thank you very much, Matt, and some great insight there into both the projects and some really impressive statistics there, and I think some aspirational benchmarks for a lot of people on the webinar. So yes, if you haven't yet put your question to us, you can do so using the chat functionality on the right-hand side of your screen. So please put forward your questions to us, and we will take them ideally in the order that they were received. First of all, there are just a few tactical little questions about the data and what were in the presentation. So first, I'd like to say that yes, this presentation will be shared with everyone on the webinar today. You will get a copy of the slides, and you'll be notified when the recording is available. a few questions about who had taken the survey. Again, it was over 90 senior shared services professionals. The first few slides will explain their seniority, and this survey took place in January through to March this year, and we've only really just closed the survey recently. We've been crunching the data, so this is very new, very fresh information. Now, one of the first questions that came in is actually asking what we really mean by process owner. So I'm going to have a stab at this question as well, but I'm also going to hand it over to you, Matt, to hear what you think makes for also a really successful process owner. So while there's not necessarily a fixed definition of process owner, in another research report we did, we crowdsourced a definition of process owner. We had asked, again, I think over 70 or 80 process owners how they would define their job, and we boiled it down to saying a process owner is someone who has control and ownership of an end-to-end process to the extent that changes to the established process cannot be made without the process owner's permission. And I mean, to feed into that definition, I think there are also, I would say there are three key things that help make a process owner really effective. One is that they're more strategic than they are operational. We want someone who has a helicopter view, someone who has a strategic vision, and who maybe understands the operations quite well, but maybe isn't necessarily involved in all of the day-to-day operational activity. That they can get up, they can see beyond, and they are more strategic. I'd say two, that they live and breathe continuous improvement. I think a solid process owner is someone who's never happy with the status quo, and who's if you know all their KPIs are green at 97%, they want to know what they can do to get to 99, 100%. And three, that they're someone that really has teeth and authority and influence in the business. We find that process owners, actually the majority of them, are recruited internally. Because an effective process owner is someone who knows the business really well, someone who the senior management trusts, and someone who will be listened to and who can drive real change. Matt, I know you work with a lot of process owners too. Is there anything that you would add that you think makes a process owner really effective?
Well, I really like your definition, Sarah, and I think if that person exists in your organization, that's really the perfect profile. I'll add that we often don't find that kind of pink unicorn of a person, so to speak, in the organizations that we work with. So alternatively, we're generally working with somebody who is chartered to drive a program like this and is mandated some authority by somebody who's very senior in the organization, whether that's the CFO or the vice president of procurement, but somebody that has gone out and understood the value of a robust P2P program and identified a strong individual within the organization that they trust to run and lead that program. So if you don't have the perfect description that Sarah just described, you can have still great success with a very strong project manager type who is well chartered by some senior leadership in the organization. That's
great, Matt. Thank you. So a few questions I'm going to put towards you first. The first one from one of our listeners is for successful organizations, what are some of the tools utilized to audit e-invoices? The reader saying that all suppliers make billing errors from time to time, and what tools do you recommend to confirm the invoices are correct? And I guess what are some of the checks that tools like Talia have in place?
Yeah, sure. So that's one of the really powerful features of a proper, robust e-invoicing solution is that invoices are validated upon receipt. So as they're coming in, regardless of the channel that they're flowing through, whether they're coming through the portal or they're coming via e-file, or even if they're being sent through that PDF, they're all being channeled through a common set of validations. So ensuring that the PO is valid for that supplier, that there's still value open on that PO, that there's price tolerances that we can apply to those PO lines. We can also, apply quantity tolerances to those POs. So all of the validations associated commonly with invoices as they flow through are being performed in real time as those suppliers are submitting those invoices. So there's a lot of upside in ensuring that the invoices that are coming in are going to meet some, and I was going to use the word minimal, but it's generally more than minimal set of criteria for an acceptable invoice. Now, all that being said, there will be cases where invoices come through that have exceptions with them, right? And we would like to believe, well, we don't like to believe, I think we would argue strongly that invoices that are arriving electronically will demonstrate a significantly lower number of exceptions than paper invoices, but you will have those exceptions, and they'll need to be handled just like any other paper submitted invoice.
That's great. Thank you very much. The next question is about the discounting. And I think the reader's trying to find out a little bit more about, I mean, who offers the discount and where is it, how is it trackable? Does it come from the buyer? Does it come from the supplier? And how do you track when this is offered, when it is captured, and what the discount is?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So the way that the Talia solution works is suppliers are organized into groups of, we call them early payment groups. And an early payment group consists of the underlying APR, or the hurdle rate that the invoices will be offered for, and some liquidity threshold, some maximum amount of cash that somebody in cash management or treasury would allocate to that early payment group. And then as invoices are being approved for those suppliers, they're kind of being checked against that early payment group, and they're saying, is there enough liquidity available to offer this invoice for an early payment? And if so, go ahead and offer that invoice for an early payment and use this underlying APR to calculate what the discount rate should be for those invoices. So the authority to offer those early payments are made through some configuration settings that are generally managed by cash management or treasury. And then they're offered to the supplier, so that when the supplier requests that early payment and it comes into your organization, it's not an offer for an early payment or a proposal for an early payment. The authority to offer that for an early payment was set before the invoice was even offered to the supplier, so that when the invoice comes back in with that early payment request, we can directly go into your ERP and adjust that invoice and schedule it for early payment with the associated discount. So it's a very scalable solution. It's something that can go across thousands and thousands of suppliers. Great question.
Great, thank you very much. And questions are coming in thick and fast. So if we don't have the time to answer your question, we can also put it to Talia directly after the webinar, and they will be able to get back to you. Next question is, does Talia's vendor portal also have an onboarding functionality for new vendors?
Yes, and I feel a little bit remiss in not sharing that as I went through it. We do. We have a tool that we call Supplier Launch. Supplier Launch is a tool that you can send an email link to a supplier that you wish to add to your vendor master, and when the supplier follows that link in the email, they'll be presented with a portal interface where they enter all of their details, where they would like to get paid. They upload all of their associated proof documents, W-8s, W-9s, voided checks, utility bills, all of the proof documents that you need to validate the integrity of the supplier, and then we bring them into your ERP or into a buyer-facing portal, and we present those to you and give you the opportunity to either accept that submission from a supplier and create the new vendor, or reject it if there was something wrong with the data that was provided to the supplier. So thank you for leading me into a module that I did not explain in my presentation.
Well, that's handy. That's great. And we've got two other listeners who have fairly similar questions. I'll see if I can capture all of it here. So one listener is saying that I would assume that companies who have adopted Talia already have already implemented some kind of AP solutions. Could you discuss how your platform and offerings would interact with existing AP solutions? And the other question is, how is it a standalone system? How would it interface with other P2P automation tools already existing?
Yes, another great question. Thank you for asking this one. So We do have a lot of experience integrating with AP automation solutions. The founders of Thalia actually have a strong background in the first company that the Thalia founders created was an AP automation solution. So if AP automation is in place in the organizations that we're delivering to, we will deliver invoices directly into those AP automation tools and allow them to follow the same flow that invoices are following today. So we can manage that integration directly into those AP solutions so that the invoices arrive in those AP solutions, go through whatever coding or approval or exception workflows need to be processed, and then ultimately be submitted into the ERP for payment through the channel that already exists with that AP automation tool. So yeah, nearly all of our customers have some level of AP automation that we're delivering directly into.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so if we didn't answer your question, we will send it over to Thalia, and we'll see if we can get back to you on a one-on-one basis. But I would just like to thank you for attending today. I'd like to draw your attention to a few other webinars we have coming up at Shared Services Link in the near future. Becoming a GPO at British American Tobacco, so anyone interested in process ownership, please tune in, as well as another webinar on how to transform your financial process, the Camelot story. We also have 3 conferences coming up, on another one on global process owners. We have the North American Summit for Leaders in Shared Services, and this week is our Procure-to-pay Leaders Summit in London. So hopefully we will either see you there or on one of our future forthcoming webinars. Thank you again, and goodbye.